It's still starting, and this Hangout Air is live. Welcome to 10th, the premier free culture sports podcast. We have a bumper show. There are about 1,000 things to talk about, and sorry for adjusting my monitor right there for the people watching the video. I was just thinking, I can't really see the notes, but then I realized I'm on video and shouldn't move the monitor. But I can see the notes. It's just not a great angle. So I am going to dispense with the niceties of opening the show just so we can get in this bumper show. So Champions League final is today. I don't really have anything to say about it other than it is Real Madrid versus the Spanish champions, Atletico Madrid. Do you have anything to say about the Champions League final before we move on to the main event?
Well, I saw that Bale is going to be good to go. And between Bale and Ronaldo, I would expect Real to win, but Atletico won the league, so maybe they're the better team today.
All right. I do some other sort of like programming in a global sense of the word notes. The MLS Stream of the Week, which we normally announce, was actually last night, so no point announcing that. And we will be doing World Cup shows on June 21st, 28th, and July 5th, assuming all goes according to plan. And I mention that right now because there's as far as I can tell, a single day of unlimited transfers in MLS Fantasy, and that is on June 11th. So we won't have another show before June 11th to do that. The reason that it's only one day, at least as far as I can tell, and the reason that certainly that there's unlimited transfers is there are only 2 games that day, and it's DC United versus the Montreal Impact and the Portland Timbers versus FC Dallas. Now, you're limited to 4 players per team. 4 times 4 is 16, not enough for a full squad. So you can get 4 players from each of those teams, 2 others, put the 2 others on the bench because they're obviously not playing, and then you can go on. So that is one of the things that we have going on in the Sportazine universe. We also have a World Cup predictor, and again, this is a very long URL, so I'm not going to read it out. It's group ID 4853. The link will also be in the show notes, but if you don't have the show notes with you and you're just listening to the audio, you can go to the fantasy page on ESPN and go to the World Cup predictor and find the group ID 4853. So the main event of the day is to do a World Cup preview. And we are going to start with Group G, which is the group that the USA is in. And there was big news earlier this week. There was, of course, the 23 that were named to the squad, but the bigger news was the 7, but one of the ones that were excluded. Landon Donovan, unless somebody gets hurt, is not going to be going to the 2014 World Cup, at least not as part of the national team. Thoughts?
Well, when I first saw the list of the players, and I thought that, no Donovan, some of the younger players, Yedlin, Julian Green, among some of the others, my first thought was that Jurgen clearly is planning for the next World Cup. I think he's made it pretty obvious that the goal is not just to progress in the World Cup, but it is to win the World Cup. And this year, I mean, as an American fan, I hope it happens, but realistically, it's probably not going to happen given the current, where our current players are compared to the rest of the world. And so my thought is that, his thinking was, if we can get these players in, give them some experience in this World Cup against some of the top teams, get some of them gelled and ready to go for the World Cup in another 4 years. And then at that time, Landon Donovan would clearly not be on the list because I think he'd be pushing 36, 37 years old. And
Yeah, he'd be 36, but I'm not convinced that a 36-year-old Donovan couldn't still be useful, if he. I mean, we don't know what the players are going to look like in 4 years, but theoretically, at least, being an old, steady hand, that could be useful. Now, Clint Dempsey is going to be 34 at the next World Cup, or 35 actually at the next World Cup. So why keep Dempsey if that's the strategy? I mean, I agree. I agree to a certain extent, but I disagree on 2 points. Number one is the extent to which he's going for 2018. I also don't think that Yedlin and Green are going to be the stars that we want them to be in 18. I actually think this is planning for 2022, and I think that's what we're looking at. Based on the talent in the pool right now, I don't see any way that we can win the World Cup in 2018. 2022, on the other hand, it's hard to say, but you give guys like Green and Yedlin reps. Yedlin will be, I believe that he is 20 right now, so he'll be 28 in 2022. Green is 18, I believe, so he'll be 26. So, but then you have guys like Bradley. He's going to be at the end of, now Bradley might still be playing. Guzan might still be playing in 2022, but Guzan's probably not a starter in 2022. But that brings us back to the whole, if next cycle is really what we're looking for, why not start Guzan? Maybe he will start Guzan. Maybe Howard's going to be the backup. I think if Guzan is the starter, then the theory holds a lot more weight. Right now, it seems like Jurgen is sort of splitting the difference, and I don't think that's going to be necessarily good for 18, 22, or 14, sort of going halvesies on who he lets in and who he lets out. I mean, the obvious thing when you look at how it doesn't line up is just to say that Jurgen is being absolutely truthful, is he's looking at camp and he's looking at his system, and Donovan doesn't fit in that system very well. He's not an out-and-out striker. Is Donovan going to start over Dempsey in the, behind the main striker? You take Zuzi out. I mean, there's a lot of... So we might end up knowing a lot more about why Donovan's out once they start lining up on the field. And also, it should be noted that it's entirely possible that Donovan will end up making the World Cup squad. If there's an injury before the games start, I believe Donovan can make it in. I know there's a couple times where the reserves can make it in. I think one of them is after the group stage. I meant to look that up, but I didn't. I don't know. Do you have that information offhand? And you are frozen. You back? Evan? You froze up on me, Evan. You back? All right, so as far as I can tell, we are still live on my end. I was hearing some from Evan, so I went ahead and plugged in to my Ethernet cable in case it was my end that was having problems. What I'm going to do, I don't think we have any, well, yeah, it says we have 0 viewers at the moment. So what I am going to do is I am going to try to get Evan back on.
I'm back right now.
All right. All right, great. So I plugged into my Ethernet cable when it froze up. So can you hear me? Do I sound okay?
Yeah, you sound fine. I mean, the problem was on my end, but I have no idea what just happened.
Okay. So I'll definitely end up cutting out all of that. I don't know exactly. Well, will you tell me where did it freeze up?
You were talking about Jurgen's camp and going in and seeing when Donovan, seeing when they line up why Donovan might not be in there because he's not going to replace Dempsey or Zusi.
Yeah, so basically that's the last thing I had said before I noticed that it froze up. So, and I think you are frozen again. Evan joined. Okay, yeah, so you rejoined this video call. So
I don't know what's going on with it right now.
Yeah. Um, well, let's move on. Well, first I'll just ask, do you have anything else to say about Donovan?
No, I mean he seemed to kind of see the writing on the wall and know that it was at least a possibility that it was going to happen, and I wouldn't say that he was okay with it because I wouldn't think anybody would be okay with being left out, but I think that he had kind of come to grips with it was gonna chances were it was probably going to happen.
Yeah.
And he talked about how he can't give his best for 12 straight days, and in the group stage, that's what you need to be able to do. Now, could he have?
There's no way that we're starting the same. Well, I guess there's some way, but I just don't think we're going to be starting the same lineup against all those teams. I mean, the
Neither
teams
do I.
pose different problems. We need to win against Ghana. 5 points is likely to get us out of that group. So if we can beat Ghana and then draw our other two games, I would certainly set up tactically different. There's no way I would not man mark Cristiano Ronaldo. I would probably do that with Yedlin just because Yedlin is really quick. He's not going to be able to deal with Ronaldo in the air, but if he can frustrate him enough and slow him down enough to where he can get some help back there when he gets close to goal, maybe Gonzalez can shadow. And Ronaldo, beastly as he is, I don't think he's going to beat Gonzalez in the air, and because he's gigantic. Gonzalez has his own set of issues, like he gets caught ball watching a fair amount. But as long as he's on point with making sure he's helping out Yedlin in the air, Cristiano gets in the area, then they might be able to shut him down. I'm not, after seeing Nani not play very much for United, he's going to be fresh, sure, but I'm not convinced that Nani is a world beater anymore, or if he ever was, to be perfectly honest. He was a world beater when he wanted to be, but not consistently. So I think my strategy against Portugal would certainly be to make somebody else beat me. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
Yeah, I agree.
All right. So the last thing I want to say in Group G is I want to ask the question: is Julian Green the next Freddie Adu? So the easy answer is no. Julian Green, plays in Germany. He didn't come across with a presumably fake birth certificate and beat up on people that were 4 years younger than him. Julian Green has not been hyped to the same extent that Freddie Adu was. So there's a fair amount of difference. But the analogy that I'm making is they are at some level seen as sort of the savior of U.S. soccer. And I think with Julian Green, he's almost the poster child for the German American influx that's the savior. It's not necessarily just Julian, but he is, has the Bayern Munich tag on him, and he's young enough to where he could be playing he could be playing in 4 World Cups. So, is he going to be the flop that Freddie Adu was? That's the question.
I don't think so. I just he might not live up to the full expectations of already, being on Bayern Munich's, B team, having like a sit on the bench for like one of their cup games or Champions League games or whatever he showed up
It was
in.
a Club World Cup game he played in
Okay.
and won. Yeah.
So, I mean, high expectations because of being able to do that at the age of 17, 18 years old. So we'd expect him to continue on that and become like a prevalent player at Bayern Munich. And if a player is of that caliber to be able to do that at Munich, then we would expect them to be, in your words for Ronaldo and Nani, a world beater. If he's at Bayern Munich. But will he pan out and be able to do that at Bayern Munich, or will they eventually ship him off somewhere else and he just kind of becomes this, what could have been player like kind of Freddie Adu was? Well, it's possible that happens. I don't think he'll be as big of a flop as we'd consider Freddie Adu. He might just not live up to that, world beater potential that some people label him with.
All right. So my predictions for Group G are Germany and the USA are going to go through. I'm just not convinced by Portugal, and I think we'll know in that first game against Ghana whether that prediction is true or not. If the USA doesn't beat Ghana, they're not going through. So,
No.
what's your prediction for that group?
Uh, uh, Germany's winning, and I'm going back and forth between Portugal and the USA on who I really, no fandom aside, who's going to get through. Um, I can see us beating Ghana, but then losing to Portugal, and that pretty much, ending all hope that we have, giving Portugal those 3 points. Um,
So, so if Ghana beats Portugal, Germany beats Portugal, we lose to Portugal, we draw with Germany, we have 4 points. Portugal has 3 points.
three. We need
Um,
Ghana to lose to Germany and not get a point.
right.
They'll be at 3 points too. We'd be at four. I don't see Ghana beating Portugal.
Okay.
I don't see that as a possibility.
Fair enough. So, I'm not going to read through all of these. I'm just going to note that when I simmed through the World Cup in FIFA 14, Wales actually qualified. Now, they have some big names, but they don't have a lot of depth. But Wales qualified, and then they got knocked out. But FIFA says that Spain will win. FIFA 14 EA Sports says that Spain will win over Portugal in the final. I don't think it's going to be an Iberian final in South America, but I could certainly see Spain winning it, although that's not my overall pick. We can come back to your predictions as we go through the group, so I just wanted to mention that on FIFA. I don't think we need to go through team by team. I do want to go through and talk about each group, though. So Group A is Brazil, Croatia, Mexico, and Cameroon. I actually have Brazil and Mexico going through. Who do you have going through in that group?
I think I have Brazil, Croatia. Although Brazil, I feel like is a lock to win the group. I think between the other three, I'm not totally convinced by Mexico. I don't know enough about Croatia where they currently stand. I know they've been good in the past, and I know they have a high FIFA ranking, or at least they have in the past. So I'm not sure. Just because I haven't seen them play, I don't know a lot of their players. In
They have a
Cameroon,
really good midfield. That's really most of what I know about Croatia is they have a really good midfield.
and then Cameroon, I mean, I don't want to feel like I'm hating on African teams. I just don't know because African teams typically, whether it's because of coaching, whether because they don't gel, they just don't do well in the World Cup. But they could make it through this group. So I'd have Brazil, and I think I have Croatia because I had to pick somebody, and I just wasn't
Right.
sure.
So Group B has our last time winners, Spain, and also has Netherlands, Chile, and Australia. So I have Spain and the Netherlands going through. I think the big story in this group is, will Diego Costa be back, and can Spain win without a striker? Now, they did it 4 years ago, more or less. I mean, Torres was more in form at that point. Was he still at Liverpool at that point
No.
in 2010? Okay. So that was right after he had moved to Chelsea, right?
Yes, I think he had actually moved to Chelsea that January.
Okay. So, thoughts on this? I mean, Chile would be the sort of there's no way Australia is getting through. Let's just not even discuss them. Chile or the Netherlands? Surely you think Spain is getting through, or maybe not.
Yeah. I mean, I have Spain, Netherlands as well. Chile could throw a wrinkle to it. I thought the biggest issue or difficulty on this one was who's going to finish first. Is Spain going to win the group or is Netherlands going to win the group?
All right. Well, let's move on to Group C. I have going through Colombia and Greece, and the other two participants in that group are Cote d'Ivoire and Japan. Now, really, I could see any four of those going through. I would not be shocked if Japan gets it together, particularly because there is such a large Japanese community in Brazil. I don't know where Japan is playing, if they'll be playing in areas with strong Japanese influence. And Cote d'Ivoire is always like, they could win the World Cup or they could not make it out of the group stage. That's sort of their MO. So,
I think
who
I
do
have
you have
Colombia.
going?
I have Colombia and Ivory Coast.
Okay.
I Greece. Every time I watch Greece play or think about Greece, I just think of having 9 defenders and them somehow getting out of the group without scoring a goal. Which I don't know if that's. I guess theoretically that's possible. I don't know. I'd have to look at that. But I had Colombia and Cote d'Ivoire. I think the Torre influence is going to be enough to get past Greece.
Yeah, that would be possible if Colombia took all 9 points and Greece had 3 points and the other two teams had 2 points. That would be possible for Greece to go through without scoring a goal. There you go. Secret to success.
Yep.
Group D, I have Uruguay and Italy going through, and then there's Costa Rica and England also in that group.
Yeah, that was a tough one for me. I do think that Uruguay will be um, in there because it's in South America and they're a good squad. I do think Italy will be in there because they're always in there. I was torn with England in that group though. I wasn't sure if they would sneak some way to get through, who they would bump out. If it would come down to goal differential somehow in this group, or a point here, point there. I'm not sure with England. Although, who is their current informed team, I'm not sure there either. So they might just not make it out of this group, which I don't know how English fans feel about that, if that's what they expect, or if they expect to win it all. You can't really ever tell how English fans feel.
Yeah. So Suarez just underwent surgery, which I
Yeah.
assume that you're aware of,
Yes.
being a Liverpool supporter. They're saying that he could be back, but even if he's back, will he be at 100%? I don't know. So it's
Yeah.
possible England sneaks through at the expense of Uruguay, either because Suarez isn't playing or because a not 100% Suarez is playing. All right, let's move on to Group E. I have Ecuador and France going through. The other two participants are Switzerland and Honduras.
Yeah, I had the same two. I had Ecuador and France. I had France winning the group and Ecuador finishing in second. Although I feel like I'm the same way with some of these South American teams that I am with African teams. I don't know enough about Ecuador and how they play together as a team. I know Switzerland has thrown some wrinkles into the plans of teams in the past. I think the last World Cup they beat Spain somehow.
They did.
1-0.
Yeah, but yeah.
And
But it was
so
on a crazy Casillas came out and got the ball and kind of tripped the guy, but somehow the momentum of the ball poked through and went in the goal, and I don't remember it vividly, but it was incredibly ugly as far as goals go. I do remember that.
So I mean that's can they do something ugly and win again and knock out one of the two teams? Probably. Is France gonna implode like they did last time? Probably not. But
they seem to do like every other World Cup. So
yeah, so this would be the year to be on form. So I would still pick Ecuador and France.
All right, Group F, we have my eventual winner, Argentina, and I also have Nigeria going through that group. The other two participants are Bosnia and Herzegovina, which is one participant, not two, and Iran.
I have Argentina and Bosnia, I believe. Again, African nations, I could see Nigeria doing it. I could see Nigeria coming in second and moving on. I think I went back and forth between them two. I pretty much gave Iran no hope. But Argentina was going to win, and I had to pick between Bosnia and Nigeria. And I guess if I have an European versus an African, I'm going to pick an African European.
So I do happen to know that Ecuador is playing, or Ecuador guy. Nigeria is playing in Salvador, which is a highly African descendant, densely populated area in Brazil. So how much does the home field advantage really matter? It's hard to say. But for me, that was sort of the tipping point for Nigeria over Bosnia. They're playing in a hot area, which Bosnia won't be used to, and the Nigerians will. at least presuming, and they'll have the home field advantage. So that's why I picked Nigeria over Bosnia. But I think if you just line up the rosters, Bosnia certainly has the better team. So
and one thing I'm kind of forgetting to think of is how do these European teams going to play traveling to South America? Because most of them have probably never played in South America because they don't play on the South American club teams, and the clubs don't travel cross continent like that. So they may have played a friendly game, against Ecuador, against a team that's not in their group. They could have played a friendly game in South America just to kind of try it out. But that's just once, maybe twice. So it's not, fully a good full experience to get them ready. So that could be one thing. I know the USA, when the World Cup's in Europe, they can't score a goal. So it could just be something weird like that, and European teams don't do well in South America. I do think every time.
Traditionally, they do not.
Yeah, I do think every time it's been in South America, a South American team has won.
That's correct.
Probably the host country of every single one.
That is certainly not correct because in 1950, Brazil lost the final. They had announced, the newspapers were already printed that they were world champions, and then they lost to Uruguay.
Okay, thank you for the history lesson.
Yes.
But a South American team has won every single time it's been in South America. So.
Yes, the first time that a European team won outside of Europe was in South Africa. It was the first time it was in Africa. So, interestingly, Africa is on the same time zones as much of Europe. So, that sort of travel, it was a long way for the Europeans, but, they didn't have to acclimatize to the jet lag. And I mean, at this point, there's no reason why jet lag should be a huge issue because they should get there early and get acclimatized to it. But be that as it may, we have one more group to deal with. Group H, I have Belgium and Russia going through. The other participants are Algeria and Korea Republic.
I had three possible teams going through: Belgium, Russia, and Korea, because Korea always seems to show up and not fully disappoint. But are they? I think they're pitted against two other teams that are pretty good. They're not pitted against a team that is a clear favorite and one who might go through. Like if they're against a Nigeria or a Bosnia or one of those, I think that maybe Korea could sneak a win here or there just by playing well like they typically do and not making many mistakes. So I believe I ended up with Belgium and Russia as well. This was another group where I was like, you have Spain and Netherlands in the same group, but you have these four teams in the same group. That just seems odd to me.
Yeah, no. All right, so I'm just going to run through my picks. So my Sweet 16 picks: Brazil versus Netherlands, Colombia versus Italy, Uruguay versus Nigeria, Germany v. Russia, Spain v. Mexico, Uruguay v. Greece, Argentina v. France, Belgium v. U.S. So in the next set of games, I have Brazil versus Colombia, Ecuador v. Germany, Spain versus Uruguay, and Argentina versus the United States. I have the U.S. going to the round of 8, the Elite 8 as I put it in here, beating Belgium. I just think that eventually the lack of World Cup experience is going to come back and bite Belgium. So my final four is Brazil versus Germany and Spain versus Argentina. And then my final is Brazil v. Argentina, and I have Brazil repeating history and losing the final, not to Uruguay this time though, but to Argentina, in a game that will end up being about 7-5, because Argentina does not play defense. That is the I'm well aware of Argentina's deficiencies. So it's not just like, oh, they have Messi, I'm going to pick them. They can't play defense. So if a team can actually stifle them and then stick one past them, if you get into a shootout, you are not going to beat Argentina. But, if you can get an early goal, maybe they give up a penalty or something, maybe they're out. But that's what I'm going with. I'm going with the All South American World Cup the South American domination in South America continues, and Lionel Messi wins the World Cup in his prime, and the comparisons to Maradona can begin in earnest, because that is the knock about Messi at the moment, is that he hasn't done it in the World Cup. Of course, he hasn't been in his prime until now. Of course, some would say that he's past his prime just based on current Barcelona form. He certainly, based on his age, should be in his prime. I guess we'll find out whether or not it was just, things going on with Barcelona, or if it was truly that Messi has played so many games and been kicked so many times that he's starting to decline early. So, what do you remember what your Final Four was? I can't look it up because
until it starts.
Yeah, until they lock. So
I'm fairly certain the Final Four is the same. I know I had Brazil, Germany in one semifinal because I thought that would have been the final had they've been on opposite sides, but they ended up being on the same side, so it was a semifinal. And I think just because of the nature of the other teams that Spain and Argentina would have to go through, that it was almost going to be Spain, Argentina by default. Now, based off what you have up here, Spain has to get through Uruguay, and Argentina has to get through France. Now, France, again, European team playing in South America, so fortune should favor Argentina there. And also Spain versus Uruguay. So that way, in that game, you went the other way. And that also depends on the Suarez situation. If he's playing, if he's 100%,
right.
I would guess he's not at least going to be 100%. Although if
I just think Spain's that good. That is really sort of thinking.
Yeah, and
Spain learned the lesson of the Confederations Cup final last year, where it ended up being not as bad, or the score could have been a lot worse, but they were just completely played off the park by Brazil and did not look good. I think they learned some lessons, and I kind of feel like that was, used as a test by Del Bosque, maybe doing a little bluffing on his lineup and the way that they set out to play. But I think they'll go out and play smarter in this tournament. And I don't know that they're, at the end of a long tournament with some Asian players, if they'll be as good as they were. But I still think that Uruguay has, to a certain extent, the same problem that Argentina has. But I don't think Uruguay's attack is as good, and I don't think that their defense is much better. So, they're basically the poor man's Argentina.
Yeah. And so I think that I had the same thing that you had, but I had Brazil over Argentina.
Yeah, I mean, that, it's a lot of the Brazil players are sort of out of form with their clubs, but maybe Scolari can get it together. So he certainly doesn't care that they're out of form with their clubs. He has his guys and he likes them. So.
And it's as they might not look great in their group, but they don't have a difficult group, so they can all get together in form and get out of that group pretty easily,
right.
And then be in form by the time they get to the knockout stages. I mean, they do have to, at least they will have to play either Spain or Netherlands, assuming those two teams get through the group in the first round.
Right.
So that's a good test in the fourth game for them. So we'll know form-wise if they've got it by then.
Yeah. And then, Chile might end up being a worse opponent for the Netherlands, or for Brazil rather than the Netherlands or Spain. I think Chile might match up a little bit better, but I don't have them getting out of the group, and neither do you. So I guess that's good for Brazil.
Yeah.
So, well, I don't know if you have thought about. We haven't really talked about too much doing, you doing a show, or if we're going to do write-ups, or how we're going to deal with the World Cup up until the 21st. I don't know if you've thought about it. If you haven't thought about it, we can just go ahead and end the recording. But if you have, I thought maybe you could throw some ideas out for the listeners, and then people could give us some feedback on what they might want us to do. We could try to do a show while I'm on vacation. It's not, if for some reason people think that doing a show on the 14th is, going to mean more than the 28th because we'll be, right in the middle of the group stages, and like all of the teams will still be there, whereas the 28th, some teams will be out. I'm sort of open for giving that a go. I just think traveling and doing the shows, I've done it plenty of times with Music Monument, but it's a hassle, especially when I'm not sort of in control of the environment, and I'm not as 100% sure where we'll be at that point. So
Yeah. No, I don't have any real good thoughts on it right now.
okay, well, if any of the listeners have any thoughts on how you think we might want to, how we should do it, or if you want to get involved, either writing or doing a show while I'm out, maybe you and Evan can coordinate something. But let us know. But until the 21st, at least for now, this has been, and that's June 21st. This is May 24th as we record. This has been Tent, the premier free culture sports podcast.